Good morning. You listen to Blaine's World Show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch us on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my lovely Zoom studio in downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Eddie LeShure. Welcome aboard, Eddie.
Thank you for having me, Blaine.
Okay, Eddie, you can also wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world, if anybody's watching. And I should mention that Eddie LeShure is a certified alcohol and drug counselor, a certified yoga instructor, a meditation teacher, a certified peer support specialist, breathwork facilitator. I want to have to catch my breath to get all this in, Eddie, and a person in long-term recovery. His primary passion is bringing trauma-sensitive, evidence-based somatic mindfulness and self-compassion practices to those recovering from substance misuse and eating disorders. Individuals expressing spiritual emergency, those wanting integration from therapeutically motivated psychedelic experiences, I like how you said that, and anyone dealing with the effects of trauma. And the question I typically ask folks is this. As a kid, you grew up where?
I grew up in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes area.
Okay. And when you grew up in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes area, did you always know you wanted to be this guy who did all this counseling and therapeutic work?
No, I wanted to play center field for the New York Yankees.
Well, join the crowd, but what happened?
Well, I wasn't good enough, and for one thing, and I did have a fantasy about working professionally in radio, which actually I did for a while.
Right.
And then, of course, I worked in community radio, as you well know, on WPVM. I had a show there. But no, it never occurred to me I would be doing this type of work as I was growing up.
So what got you into this kind of work?
Well, let's see. Try not to make this too long a story, but when, I'm 73. So I got out of high school in 66 and went full into the whole 60s experience, which involved a lot of drugs. And that eventually led me to addictive behavior and a narcotics charge. And I ended up going to prison for 2 years.
Wow.
And bad enough that I went to a maximum security prison, but that particular prison was in upstate New York. It was called Attica.
Right.
And perhaps you've heard of it. Some of our listeners have, because in 1971, about 50 years ago from a month from now, if I said that right, there was an uprising that resulted in the deaths of 43 people. So I am a trauma survivor.
Wait, were you there during that uprising?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I was there. Oh, yeah. We could talk for hours about that. That's another whole.
By the way, let me just stop you a second, because I'm listening to this story, which I didn't know about you. And I'm saying, man, if you haven't done this, what a book. Are you writing the book?
I'm in books. I've been written about in books, but I've never written a book. No.
Are you planning to?
No. To do it right is not a simple project.
But what a story. So
it is a story. Yeah. And you don't know the half of, there's other stuff as well. But so anyway, I continued my addictive behavior for several years, despite the fact that I started doing yoga in prison. I've actually been doing yoga for 50 years. So I started doing yoga in prison. And then about 10 years later, after I got out, I started doing meditation. But I still struggled with addictive behavior because I didn't understand how the trauma that I had experienced in Attica had affected me. And finally, I got to a point where I realized I need to get some help. So I went to treatment and I got clean, as they say, clean and sober, and have been, building on that recovery. I met Margaret a little over 10 years ago. And in the meantime, I've been doing yoga and meditation, and she was a yoga teacher. And we were sitting down one day and she says, well, you've used yoga and meditation for your own recovery, and it's been very helpful, right? And I said, absolutely. It's been, I go to meetings and all that and build community, but yoga and meditation has really been the core of me being able to avoid going back and using again. And she said, well, do you think any treatment centers would be interested in hiring you to come in and teach them? Well, the timing was right because there was now this growing awareness within the recovery world that yoga and meditation are evidence-based practices. In other words, they've done research and studies that help people in their recovery. So in order to do this, Margaret and I had to get licensed. So we started getting licensed in the state of North Carolina, which we are fully licensed certified alcohol and drug counselors. So it's kind of like my own personal journey through learning these practices and finding recovery and understanding how these practices help me led me to the point where I said, I can help other people.
It's funny you saying that, because I remember talking when you were around the same age as I am. And I took TM for the first time in the 70s. And it was interesting, Eddie, because that's the first time I ever heard where they were saying they were doing studies then that it could help people in prison, and help cut down the return rate of prisoners. Yeah. But then I think what hurt that whole movement was when the Beatles got into it, and then they said you could levitate, and was on such a roll. Everybody was remember meditation courses and teaching it. And then it sort of became less believable for a long time, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there are a lot of mistaken ideas and concepts about what meditation is, what it should look like, what the experience would look like. And what I tell people is the meditation that I teach, which is mindfulness meditation, and it's somatic mindfulness because we really engage the body in the practice. It's not about getting somewhere else. It's not about trying to change the experience. And I'm not saying that if somebody wants to meditate to feel more peaceful, that there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, that's great. But it's not so much about trying to escape the present experience as much as engaging the present experience, whether it's sensations in the body, thoughts in the mind, whatever our senses are experiencing, being able to engage it with curiosity and kindness. I say meditation, the way I teach it, is kind of getting to know ourselves, understanding our habits of mind, understanding our types of reactivity. Isn't it helpful, Blaine, if there was something that always triggered a very reactive response on your part that was unskillful? You'd want to kind of like, why? I don't want to do that. Why do I do that? Meditation is a practice that can help us start understanding like what pushes our buttons and why we react, be able to pause and really bring compassion to our experience rather than just wanting to avoid it or numb it and so on.
Well, what got me back into it, Eddie, was a book I'm sure you're familiar with too. It was kind of a different term for the experience, but was it the relaxation response by Benson? Was the author?
I've heard of the book. I'm not.
Yeah, but anyway, so he took, and I'm going to have you do the same thing too. But he took some of the mysticism out of it, and you didn't have to go to India to study it, or you didn't have to go to Iowa to study it, but he made it believable. And I won't tell it to you on the air, but even to this day, I still remember my mantra. I was sworn to secrecy that I couldn't tell anybody. That was the whole thing, right? You got an individual mantra. Now, when you studied it, did you get a mantra, or did you see?
No, I didn't take that approach. My training in meditation has been primarily through the Buddhist tradition. Right. So in the early 80s, I met someone who had studied with this amazing Vietnamese teacher named Thich Nhat Hanh. You've heard of him. And she started talking to me about the practices, and we would get together and I started learning. And I just read and started doing retreats. And over the last 40 years, I've spent the equivalent of 2 years in retreat setting. I mean, actually lived in centers and gone on retreats. So it's primarily Buddhist informed, but I also have opened up to all other types of influences as well. And I teach it in a very secular way.
Well, and talk about that, because I have a question concerning that in terms of, you said 2 years in retreats. How long have you spent in meditation? And talk about, because that's, I think a lot of people have that concern, and you hear it, I'm sure, all the time. I don't have time for this, Eddie. It's going to take me too long. Describe what it is for people who know it, but they don't really know it.
Well, I mean, I do meditation retreats for like 2 weeks where I'm meditating for hours and hours and hours. But in actuality, some of it is sitting practice where I sit down, close my eyes. Some of it is walking meditation. Some of it's working in the kitchen, chopping meditation. It's eating meditation. You know, I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if everything we did, we were fully aware and conscious moment to moment of our intention, really tuned in and paying attention to everything that's going on? But to your point, we can do meditation for just a couple of minutes. You know, what if when you went out to drive your car, rather than just jumping in, and I'm not saying you do this, Blaine, but a lot of people just jump in, put the key in, and they take off, regardless of what mood they're in. They might be upset, they might be angry, they might be distracted. What would it be? How would it be different if they sat down and just said, let me just take 2 minutes and breathe and pay attention to my breath and notice my thoughts, notice my experience, and just really pay attention and find out what's going on right now. Maybe we might be more conscious as we're driving. We might be less reactive, you know, if somebody cuts us off. I tell people, if you want to start meditating, start with just 2 or 3 minutes, once or twice a day. Just start out real short meditations.
And talk about that, Eddie, because I want to compliment you here in that I think you're the first person I ever heard say that, you know, because again, when most people talk about it, and the course I took and the book I read said you have to give yourself 20 to 30 minutes, whatever, twice a day. And that I think scares a lot of people. You know, they're not ready to do that. Yeah. So that's interesting. You can do this with, at least initially, you can do this within 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Start out slow. Again, going back to my earlier point, we just like offering slow, simple steps. We want to make it accessible to people. Take the mystique, out of it. I can't tell you how many people I've met over the years that I've been teaching who say, I can't meditate.
Right.
And I say, why? Well, I can't still my mind. I can't quiet my mind. I say, you don't have to quiet your mind. You just notice your mind and breathe, right? And they go, really? I met a guy, he says, I can't meditate because I fidget.
Right, yeah.
And I said, okay, what if you just notice for the period of time that we're going to meditate? It was a group. It was actually some guys in recovery. What if during this short period, I think it was 8 minutes, you just notice that you're fidgeting? Just be aware that you're fidgeting. Notice the sensation of fidgeting. Notice what you're telling yourself about fidgeting. You know, stories like, I shouldn't be doing this, or, right? Just notice what's happening around fidgeting for 8 minutes. He goes, that's my meditation. I said, yeah. And we got done and I rang the bell, Blaine, and you should have seen the look on his face. It's like he had just gotten the Nobel Peace Prize.
We'll talk about this because it's fascinating to me that, so you obviously have worked with people who have substance abuse problems.
Oh, yeah.
And you know the research, and I appreciate if you kind of give the Reader's Digest version of it, but meditation can actually help people who are through recovery?
Absolutely.
How so?
Well, the short version of the answer is most everybody who deals with addiction, I mean, addiction is just compulsive behavior.
Sure.
And we as human beings all engage in certain types of compulsive behavior. It just depends on what it is and how extreme it is and what the consequences are. I'm sure some of our listeners are aware that they're addicted to this. Oh, I'm a little bored. Let me pick it up and check email. I know I only checked 3 minutes ago, but I better check again, or work, or whatever it is, right? There's all kinds of compulsive behaviors. And I go back to what the Buddha taught, which is basically, we're going to experience a certain level of dissatisfaction. It's part of life if we want our experiences to be different than what they are. And we spend a lot of our life wanting things that we don't have and avoiding things that we don't want. So what if we start noticing this and learn to accept and work with these experiences and pay attention to our habits that get us in trouble? So going back to your question about people in addiction, they start learning that they can pause and notice, for example, cravings. So there might be somebody who's new in recovery and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to have a drink. I got to have a drink. What if they can just pause and breathe and go, oh, wow, yeah, I'm feeling anxious. I want a drink. I know, because see, using addictive behavior is comfort seeking, Blaine. That's what it is. When I used drugs, whether it was shooting dope or drinking or smoking pot or whatever it was, I just wanted to alleviate the discomfort. I wanted to alleviate the pain. So they learned that instead of going out and buying that alcohol and using it, maybe they can pause and breathe and tune in to whatever anxiety they're feeling, whatever is going on, and just say, let me breathe. Let me sit with this. Let me notice this discomfort. Notice what I'm telling myself. Maybe I'm telling myself this is too much, right? Which is just a story. The biggest addiction is people believe everything that's going on in their head. They believe all the stories. And most of those stories aren't even true, right? So if they can start paying attention, they can manage to work with and accept this difficult experience that they feel compelled to try to fix, to try to numb, to try to seek comfort from. And what happens is, and this is the beauty of the studies that you referred to earlier, they did studies, I know a lot of them at Harvard Medical Center. When people start meditating, in as soon as 3 weeks of regular meditation practice, there's changes in the brain. See, there's the brain, there's a neurophysiological aspect to this, where there's part of our brain that's on high alert. It's the sympathetic nervous system that's constantly looking out for danger, right? And it gets activated and it generates anxiety and it feels threatened. And then there's another part called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, okay? It's kind of foot on the gas, foot on the brake. Now, ideally, we're navigating between those two aspects of the autonomic nervous system, getting some gas pedal when we want it and some brake pedal when we want it, and we navigate through life and there's no problems. But people in addiction, they are just hyper vigilant, hyperactive, and they don't know what to do. But by doing the meditation, they can what we call down regulate, bring themselves down into the parasympathetic nervous system and learn to work with the discomfort rather than using. So when you do this, it starts creating new neural pathways in the brain. The part of the brain that is constantly agitated over a period of time shrinks. And the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that can think logically, starts growing. So as you continue to do the practice, you start learning how you can respond rather than react. And you actually build new neural pathways, neuroplasticity. They found in as soon as 3 weeks of doing meditation practice, you can start rewiring your brain. I mean, this is amazing.
2 points, Eddie.
So,
if I can just jump in. One is you mentioned the Harvard studies, and I just made a note. I want to check into this, but I'm pretty sure that guy I mentioned, Benson, was the one behind them. Well, he was the lead or one of the researchers. But also you mentioning something fascinating, the fact that it can be used to help people with negative behaviors.
Yeah.
Can the meditation be turned around, or can you use it for positive kinds of things? I don't want to give up anything, but I want to have a good life.
You can enhance your sense of joy.
You can?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you go out in nature and you're just walking through the woods and you look up and you just pause and breathe and just really tune into this feeling of joy and awe. Blaine, you've walked out and seen a sunset and you just went, oh my God. And you can learn how to enhance that experience as well as mitigate the discomfort of when you bang your shin on the coffee table, right? So you can work with all of it. It's simply bringing awareness to present moment experience, moment to moment, with curiosity and kindness, and developing an enhanced state of awareness about whatever the experience is.
That's funny you say that, because when Cynthia and I walk around in Fairview, and we live on a beautiful street, and I'm noticing for the first time, Eddie, as you're kind of talking about it, the beautiful trees, you know, and the flowers
Yeah.
in our garden. And I really never noticed that before, but it's really kind of cool to pay attention to it, you know.
Yeah.
But,
Savor it.
but,
Savor it. Breathe.
but,
Oh,
but
yeah.
talking about savoring, let me kind of put you on the spot here, though.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time, but can you kind of give both me and I guess listeners, viewers, kind of a mini
Yeah.
version of what happens? And I love what you said, by the way, 2 or 3 minutes, I'm there, baby. You know,
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes, maybe not. We don't have 20 minutes. We have 2 to 3 minutes. Go through the experience.
Yeah. And I will say, when I do meditations, I typically sit longer myself, but I've been doing it a long time.
Right.
But for beginners, yeah. So here's a practice. Let's say, for example, someone is feeling anxious or stressed or really struggling with something. I'm going to use the bell. Okay. And let's just take 2 or 3 minutes. And if our listeners choose to, they can close their eyes, but you don't have to close your eyes for this. And obviously, if you're listening on the radio to the live broadcast and driving around town, we recommend you don't close your eyes, but just pause for a moment and notice how you're sitting. Notice your position in the chair, or maybe you're standing, and just notice what it feels like to be connected to a piece of furniture or connected to the floor. Perhaps feeling the pressure on your feet or the pressure on your bottom or your back, that touch point. Just notice what it feels like to be sitting, the experience. And maybe noticing your hands touching. They might be in your lap or on a chair. Notice that. You might notice your lips touching. And as you're sitting or standing, notice your surroundings. You might notice, for example, if you're sitting, that there are certain sounds, maybe air conditioning or birds in the trees or whatever sounds there might be. And you might notice fragrances, perhaps some flowers or somebody's cooking in the kitchen. Just opening all the senses up. If your eyes are open, you can notice your environment. You might bring your attention to an object and notice the colors and the shape. And then bring attention to breathing. Where do you notice the experience of breathing? Is it in the belly? Or maybe you notice the air moving through your nostrils. Notice each in-breath and each out-breath. And see if you can follow that sensation of breathing with your attention as you breathe all the way in and all the way out. And as you're noticing this breathing, you might even notice there's little gaps in between the in-breath and out-breath. So we're simply noticing this experience of sitting or standing, whatever it is, and breathing and noticing our surroundings. And of course, as we do this, we may get distracted by thoughts. And that's okay. We just notice the thoughts pull us away. We just come back to breathing, and we allow our attention to follow this natural breath. And when we're distracted, we simply gently return each time. Breathing in, breathing out, aware of our environment. And then if your eyes are closed, you might gently open them and look around, notice your surroundings. And if you feel inclined, you might bring a little bit of movement into your fingers, your toes, or your shoulders. And let an exhale out. And just notice how you're feeling. So congratulations.
I feel calmer, by the way.
Well, and there is something that's happened on a neurophysiological level while this is going on.
But I feel honored, especially that you used those chimes, because that made it official, you know.
Well, these I bought in Nepal almost 30 years ago. So they have a lot of meaning to me. They're very dear when I hear the sound.
And what about a concern? I've heard some people say that the word, for example, that they'll do it too long, you know, that they have an appointment to make and, you know, they have to get to the appointment in half an hour. How do you deal with that?
This is where this comes in handy because there are apps that you can download. My favorite is a free app you can get called Insight Timer.
Okay.
Insight, GHT, Timer. And not only do they have guided meditations on there, which can be very nice for, you know, relaxation before you go to sleep, but there's a timer. And this is what I do. I usually sit for 20 minutes, Blaine. So I go into Insight Timer and I just program it for 20 minutes. And there's a bell that rings when I hit go. And then I just close my eyes. I do my practice. 20 minutes later, 3 bells, and I'm done. I'm not going to miss my appointment. I don't have to watch the clock and keep track of the time. Right. It's great.
So, and an incredible thing, like I said, that's free, you know, for people to get hold of. Yeah. What about in terms of any specific place or location you should meditate?
It's a great question. If you want to have a regular practice, it's a good idea to set up a place in your home where it's dedicated to that. So it, you know, I don't recommend, for example, in front of the TV where the TV is, or you know, this kind of thing. Behind me on the other side of the screen, if I were to move this screen out of the way, there's actually an altar, and I put significant photos and objects on there that have meaning to me, and I burn incense on it. So when I go in front of the altar, it's like, oh, this spot, this place is for meditating. Now, you don't have to have an altar, but it's good to have a quiet place that you regularly use where you sit and do the practice. Also, it's good to eliminate any distractions. It's good to set up a regular schedule. Like, for example, every morning I get up, I have my coffee, and then I do my meditation. And you might tie it to another activity like coffee, meditation, or shower, meditation. And so, yeah, that can help you start developing maybe a pattern. But it is good to have a place in your home where you can do it. Or, you know, there are meditation groups. There are several in Asheville. I know not all your listeners are in Asheville, but there, you know, you can go and practice with other people and go to their, you know, if the places have opened up because of COVID, you can go and practice with other people. And those are dedicated spaces specifically for meditation.
A last question. How often do you recommend that people meditate?
I think it's good to do something every day.
Twice a day or once a day is enough?
Well, if a person can do 3 or 4 minutes a couple times a day, it's going to make consistency is more important than the length of time. I think it's better to meditate 3 or 4 minutes a couple times a day than to meditate an hour twice a week.
Good point. Eddie, if folks want to get in touch with you to talk about a couple of kinds of things. So first of all, to get in touch with the company, Mindful Emergence, LLC, what's the best bet?
Well, normally I would send people to our website, but we're in the process of rebuilding it. And so the best thing to do is email us. And our email address is discover@amindfulemergence.com. So discover at the letter A Mindful Emergence, amindfulemergence.com. And I presume that when you put this content up, you can put something in the description, perhaps?
Yeah, probably, or maybe not. But if not, add it to the comments. Feel free to do so.
Okay, yeah. So
but let me go back to
with you on that.
Right. But let me go back to the premise that you said. So if folks contact you, they can contact you, it seems like, then for a variety of kinds of things. You can work with folks individually, but then you can also work with groups as well.
We will work with groups, and we will do presentations and trainings as well. We work with people in addiction recovery, not people who are still using. This is they've stabilized and they want to strengthen their recovery. We work with people in spiritual emergency, which is a whole conversation. These are people who've had awakening experiences and they're struggling with life to figure out how to manage these experiences. And we do work with people who are using plant medicines and psychedelics therapeutically, not recreationally, because more and more this is being done and they want to be able to make meaning of these experiences. We work with that population as well. And I will give out our website. It's amindfulemergence.com. Just know that we're still tweaking it.
And you're also on Facebook, I think, as well?
We're on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel that's got, I think, 92 videos right now.
Oh, okay.
A Mindful Emergence. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Eddie, for being my guest this first half hour on the BLAINESWORLD Show. I'm going to magically make you disappear. And as we bring in our second guest, hopefully I'll actually get to see you sometime in person in the next couple of years, buddy.
Look forward to that.
Thanks
Wayne.
again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so as Eddie disappears, we're going to be waiting for our second guest. But I should mention that as she works her way into the studio, let me see if I can get her into the studio. I should mention WPVM's mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. And listeners are invited to help support. We hear Eddie in the background, but listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can do so by going to the website, WPVMFM.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. And I think as kind of we wait for our second guest, she will be with us hopefully soon. I should mention that you're listening to the BLAINESWORLD Show. Let me just see if I can bring, there she is. Okay, you're listening to the BLAINESWORLD Show, heard Wednesdays here on WPVM FM. I should welcome our second guest as she's getting set up. And she is Margaret Kirschner, and she is a co-owner of A Mindful Emergence, LLC. And welcome aboard, Margaret. Are you all set up?
Yes, I'm all set up.
Okay, great. Looking good there. You can also feel free to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world. So if everyone's watching you, they can, there you go. Okay. I should mention that Margaret Kirschner is a certified alcohol and drug counselor, certified trauma-sensitive yoga therapist, certified peer support specialist, and breathwork facilitator. She specializes in guiding individuals' mindful emergence into wholeness through trauma-sensitive gentle movement therapy, mindfulness practices, integrative breathwork. And Margaret, I'll ask the same question I asked Eddie the first half of the show, and that is in terms of getting into this whole field, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay, and when you grew up as a little girl in Connecticut, did you always know you wanted to be this mindful breathwork expert? Was that your goal in life?
No, not at all. No,
What did you want to be when you were a little kid?
No, I wanted to be a mother. So I came to this kind of work through my role as a caregiver and realized that caregiving, although it's a good thing, it can be taken too far. So I progressed into martyrdom and gave away a lot of my energy until I got, sick and depleted and depressed and realized I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of my mind and my body, and I need to find out ways to nourish myself. So
when did that happen?
It happened in my late 30s, 38 specifically, is when I started yoga and meditation.
Okay. And was there any specific thing that happened at the age of 38?
Yeah, I was just really depressed. And I started yoga and realized that it was so important, so emotionally therapeutic and nourishing, and also physically. Okay.
So you started studying yoga, and then what got you from studying it to then starting to teach it?
Not too much. It was very quick. It was about a year of studying yoga and meditation. I realized it did so much for me. It healed me so much that I knew that I had to share this with others. So
the first thing you started sharing was the yoga, and then you got into, and you'll have to teach me a little bit more about what else you do in terms of the breathing work you do, breath work.
Sure.
Well, why don't I ask you, what is that exactly?
The breathing practices, there are really two major categories. One is the yogic breathing practices, and that's referred to as pranayama. Prana means energy, and yama means to manage the energy. And then the other category of breathing practices is something very different called integrative breath work. And it's more dynamic breathing. It's continuous, deeper, faster breathing. We do it lying down. We put on headphones. We listen to evocative music for about an hour. Eyes are covered, and it brings us into an enhanced state of mind.
Now, is that separate from yoga, or is in conjunction with?
It's separate from yoga, although it is considered a growth, self-discovery, growth opportunity. It's a way to move the ego mind out of the way, as we do in deep meditation, and check in with our inner guidance. The inner guidance is revealing itself in every moment, but it's subtle. So we need to have practices like meditation, yoga, or this integrative breathing that allows that inner guidance to be noticed and felt and heard and then acted upon.
Now, what's cool about it, even listening to your story, is that this is, I want to say, contrary to medical approach, but it's certainly different. You know, I don't hear you saying you're going to 2,700 doctors and taking all sorts of pills and medication. You're getting away from that.
Exactly. The medical model is pretty reductionist. You know, it may ignore synergistic healing practices, and our approach is more holistic. It really depends on complementary and simultaneous mechanisms of action. So breathing by itself is really good, especially the calming breathing or the energizing breathing if we need that. Movement is really good. We know that. And so is mindfulness. But when you put all of them together, there's this synergistic complementary mechanism of action that creates something brand new.
We'll talk about that, Margaret, both in terms of your life and, again, also with respect to some of the people you work with, how it's helped some people, you know, in terms of getting out of whatever situation they were in to now being, quote, relatively healthy. Have you seen that?
Oh, absolutely. In so many ways. So let's say someone is depressed. Some of the movements can bring some energy into the body and help relieve some of the tension that goes along with depression. And the breathing practices can calm an anxious mind. It can be very soothing and regulating. On the other hand, some forms of depression feel very heavy and stagnant, as though people are just stuck in inertia. And there's ways to move and breathe that can stimulate and arouse some energy in the body. The breathing practices, if we were to try integrative breathing, we may go way back into our childhood and suddenly have a memory of where that depression originated. And the psyche is able to bring up certain material that we're ready for, and not more than that. So it's a really gentle and wise way of working with the psyche and the physical body.
How does this kind of coexist with meditation? In other words, Eddie was talking the first half of the show about meditation. This is, I guess, it complements the meditation you're doing, or done in conjunction with.
Yeah, they all work so synergistically together. So we can think of meditation as, you know, what the media portrays, sitting and closing our eyes, but meditation can be moving. We can be walking. Yoga is really meditation in motion. Breathing can be a meditation because the breath can be a focal point. It's often the one focal point that is taught most predominantly in meditation because it's always available. It's free, portable, convenient. We have it wherever we are, whether we're lying in bed, driving a car, working, or sitting and having a kind of more formal meditation.
Is this something I have to do on a daily basis?
Yes, daily, ideally. And
Right.
I heard Eddie say consistency is more important than intensity. And that rings true for most of what we do. When we're consistent with anything, we get better at it. If we consistently watch TV, we'll get really good at that. If we're consistent with meditating or simply noticing our breath, we'll get better at that, and it'll be more natural and available to us when we need it.
We'll talk about the process, Margaret, in terms of, with me, for example, I don't know a lot of what you're talking about, so this is very helpful to me and listeners as well. So if somebody were to come to see you and they take some yoga lessons or they do some yoga work with you, but also they want to learn more about the breathing process or the breathing process you teach, can you give kind of like a Reader's Digest version, an example of what it is?
Sure. The kind of yoga that I teach is considered trauma-sensitive mindful movement. So what that means is it's slow. We move in ways that are corrective. It's the opposite of trauma. So if you think of what trauma feels like, it generally has some aspect of being painful, fast, out of control, unintegrated, kind of leaving like fragments of wreckage in our psyche, in our bodies. It's very uncomfortable. We don't want it, and it's intrusive. So when we move our bodies in a slow way, I like the expression, slow is pro when it comes to trauma. So we're moving slowly, we're being mindful, we're breathing in particular ways that correspond with the movements. This is a way to correct the effects of an unintegrated, overwhelming experience so that we feel that we're more aware of the inside sensations like breathing or heartbeat or muscle tension or ease, temperature like warmth and coolness. And when we feel that we can make effective choices and regulate some of those inside sensations, we feel a lot better in our own skin. And that helps us to take good care of ourselves.
So it's something in terms of taking care of ourselves that you should do not only when you're in need, but also in terms of if you're feeling good. There's something you should be doing all times.
Yeah, when you're feeling good, savor that pleasant feeling. Savor the relaxation. Say, oh, I'm feeling good. This is what it's like to feel good, to feel happy, to feel connected, to feel a deep breath. So that when you are not feeling good, which is a human condition, we go from feeling good to not feeling good. We know how to get back to that pleasant state. And over time, when we can savor feeling safe, feeling pleasant, then we regulate our nervous system toward pleasant. Because in our brains, we have this negative bias. And that's a protective mechanism. So when something bad happens, something overwhelming happens, we know that it's something that we don't want to repeat again. So the brain stores that as a really prominent memory, and that keeps coming back again and again and again in order to protect us. But the pleasant memories, they're a little slippery. You know, what's the expression? The bad stuff is like Velcro, and the good stuff is like Teflon. So the good stuff seems to kind of slide out of our awareness. But when we are savoring something pleasant, for example, right now, if you look around your room, there might be a pleasant color or a pleasant picture or something that is meaningful to you. And if you let your eyes just rest on that pleasant thing right now, just really take it in. Oh, I like that color. Or that reminds me of that time that was pleasant. And just let that be known to your nervous system as though you're just soaking in hot water, drinking a nice beverage, cooling beverage, and you've got this lovely music playing, whatever the scene is. You're just taking in the pleasant. And so you can help your nervous system remember that.
Well, it's funny you say that because as you mentioned it, I just did what you said. It was kind of cool. I just looked at a picture in my office. And it's I'm with my Cynthia, my beautiful bride, and we're at a costume party. And I just look at it. Every time I see it, I just smile.
It makes you laugh.
Yeah, it really does. So thank you. That's an excellent idea. But let's go a step further then. So I'm working with you, took some yoga courses with you, Now I want to learn more about this breathing practice,
Mhm.
to, if not breathe better, breathe differently. Can you give an example of that or run me through what that would entail?
Sure. So if someone is anxious, we might try a simple anxiety relieving breath that I call prolonged exhale. And it simply means that we're going to take a little bit longer to exhale than we do to inhale. And we're going to listen to the sound that the breath makes as it moves out of the body. And we're going to feel those sensations of muscle softening and mind starting to get a little bit more spacious, less racy. And that can really help to move that spinning mind down, kind of quiet it, soothe it. There's nothing wrong with anxiety either. It's not like we're trying to fight it or squash it. We're just working with it. Like, okay, I know you're here and I'm watching you. I'm watching you soften and I'm watching my muscles get more relaxed. There are other breathing practices that do the opposite. So let's say someone is unmotivated, they feel grief or despair or hopelessness. We might try a different kind of breathing practice, maybe a longer inhale where we hold that breath in the lungs and feel its fullness, and maybe make a gesture with our arms, stretching them wide open, taking up a lot of space, feeling powerful. And then we relax and we let that go. And we do that several times, simply noticing the feeling of a deeper breath, a bigger hold, taking up more space. And
Elaborate on the
that,
one breathing practice I've heard, but you'll do a better job teaching it. Is what is you're supposed to inhale and then hold it for a count of, like, was it 1 to 4 or 4 to 1 or something? Where you inhale and then hold it for 4 seconds. Do you
there
know
are
what I'm talking
all
about?
kinds of ratios out there. One of
Right,
the most common one that you might be referring to is 4 square.
right. What is that exactly?
Yeah, 4 square is breathing in for the count of 4. You could do it right now. Breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it out 4, 3, 2, 1.
I once heard the same technique, but it's like 1 to 4 ratio where you inhale and then hold it 4 6, 4 versus 16. Have you ever heard something like that? That
Mm.
holding it longer or exhaling it longer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are all kinds of ratios that do different things for different bodies. So, breathing is a very powerful practice. And one caveat that I might say, because there are so many different kinds and so many different ratios, is you want to always notice if you're striving or hungry for breath. That's a signal that you're trying too hard and it's not going to be effective or beneficial. It might actually have ill effects. So, it's nothing to take lightly. So it's good to work with someone who has a little bit of training and skill, maybe not a little bit, maybe a lot, because it is so powerful. It's more powerful than yoga.
Is it really? Because it's something else too. I'm thinking out loud with you that we never taught. Nobody ever showed you how to breathe properly or
Mm-hmm.
the value of it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something I guess that can be learned, or but it's just,
Absolutely, it can be learned, and it's one of our most important and most powerful aspects. It's something that can be done voluntarily, as we're talking about. We can change the breathing rhythm and ratio, and we can hold and not hold. But it's also something that is done unconsciously. We don't have to think about it. Our breath just keeps going. Since day one, it's been doing that. So when we are able to voluntarily manage the breath, it has powerful effects on our system.
how about breathing through the mouth versus the nose?
Yeah, in yoga breathing, it's mostly through the nose, in and out through the nose, because there are many, many advantages to that. Clarifying the breathing, warming it up, just moving the energy more efficiently. But in the other kind of breathing that I mentioned, integrative breath work, it's a whole different thing. We want to move more breath fast. We want the effect to be pretty fast, within about 10 minutes or so. And it has a mind altering as well as a physiological effect, tingling, muscles getting tight or muscles getting very, very relaxed. a whole wide range of things can happen. So that's different. That's with mouth open.
How about in terms of mouth open, sleeping practices? And some people, they say there, I think my wife she sleeps with her mouth open. And supposedly that's not good, or it's discouraged from sleeping with your mouth open. Have you heard that?
Yeah. I think that's when we're snoring, right?
Right.
Our
Yeah.
mouth is open. I've even seen some device, but I have no idea about it. I haven't checked it out, but where people can tape their mouth during
Right.
sleep.
Yeah. She's tried that too at times. But why is that encouraged though, in terms of sleeping, that just the snoring issue is the major reason why you shouldn't breathe with your mouth?
Probably. I don't know.
How about another type of breathing, Margaret, in terms of athletes? I've read about or seen there's some other breathing exercises they do to get pumped up very quickly in those before an event or something. I guess is a different kind of breathing to get you really motivated or excited about something.
I don't know what athletes do, but it's probably similar to what I was describing. Like you're taking in a lot of air and then you're holding it in, and it builds up a lot of energy fast.
It'll be like very short breaths or something,
yes.
Sort of like you're describing.
Yeah. So that's,
And what does that do when you do that?
Well, to inhale is to inspire. So we're inspiring our energy. We're animating ourselves. We're alive. To exhale slowly is more of I guess I'd say depressing, but it is calming. It's soothing. It's bringing the energy down.
Now, I don't want you to let Eddie hear this, but I just have another question in terms of, and this is kind of how my mind goes a little bit, Margaret, but we were talking the first half about meditation. Now we're talking about breathing. And can the two kind of be combined at the same time? Can I be doing my meditation at the same time I'm doing my breathing exercises?
Oh, absolutely. We want to combine all of these. We want to combine movement and breathing and mindfulness. So yeah, when you are mindful, you're meditating. And when you're adding the focus on the breath, you are in your body. You're in the present moment, and you are practicing being non-judgmental, being curious, being kind, being gentle with yourself. And if all of those things are coming together, there's going to be some mind state that's going to be very supportive.
So I'm thinking out loud, if I could do maybe the two of them, and then I'll get my exercise in at the same time, and then I'll eat some, I'll eat and read, which is, it's so funny, we're laughing, but it's kind of just the opposite. I think what you're trying to encourage people, and Eddie too, that you don't have to do 17 things at once. Sometimes you were talking about simplicity or mindfulness. I guess sometimes it's helpful to just take it slow and just kind of really work on one thing at a time.
Slow is pro, because our lives are at a fast pace, and there's so much information coming in so fast that when we voluntarily, consciously, and very courageously slow ourselves down, what do you think might be happening? We might be becoming more aware of our inside sensations. We might be clearing the fog of confusion and noticing what's real, noticing the truth, noticing how we feel, noticing our authentic expression. And that's, I think, what we all want, to be real, to be authentic. So we can't get there when we're going fast.
Now, is that happening when you're doing yoga also?
The kind of yoga that I teach is not fitness-based. It is more about therapy. It's really a meditation in motion. It's knowing who we are and knowing what we want.
Reminds me of my favorite story on yoga I once took with my wife. Was it restorative yoga? And it was sort of similar to what you're saying, and they put all sorts of bolsters down, and you got very comfortable. I was loving it to the extent I fell asleep, and so the instructor put everybody back, and for the hour they were doing regular yoga stuff, I just slept for the hour. I loved it, so
that is very common for someone to be in a yoga class, especially one that you've described. But on the other hand, let's say someone has a high level of anxiety and they go to a restorative yoga class expecting your result. It may not be that way. So here's the caveat. Sometimes when people with anxiety get quiet and get relaxed, there is a feeling of panic. and it might not be the best thing. So we have to judge for ourselves, where we are and what's going to be the best approach. So I'm kind of in the middle. I offer slow movement. So we're not lying down the whole time. We're actually doing something that's just slightly active, but it's not like a vigorous class.
Talk about how this helps people in various traumatic situations, in terms of maybe some of the people you've worked with or on a one-to-one basis. Have you seen significant progress with them?
Yes, actually, yeah. I mean, it may take a while. So these things are not overnight, magic pills. So slow is pro means that, we have to take it slow. And everybody's a little different. Their system may start to respond at first, but then as they continue to do it, let's say a month or so goes by and they're really getting a lot of benefit. They're going slowly. They're feeling better. All of a sudden, there's this phenomenon called backdraft, which refers to what fighter fighters experience when they open up a door and all the oxygen rushes in and the fire, blows up considerably. The same can happen when we are being kind and gentle and compassionate, practicing self-care. Sometimes what happens is all of the trauma and the memories and the feelings rush back in. And that's the ego saying, wait a minute, we've got to protect this ego structure. We can't just relax here. And so there might be a feeling of, intensity, panic, something's not working. And it simply may be an indicator that it is working, but some of the emotions and sensations and memories that were stuffed way down and back, kind of packed in tight, are now kind of bubbling up to the surface of awareness so that they can be worked with.
If somebody wants to start working with you, or they feel some of the things we've talked about, what's the best way to begin the process? Do they call you, sign up for a course?
Yeah, the best way right now, since our website is being constructed and it's probably close to being done, but best way is contact us by our email, discover@amindfulemergence.com.
Okay. And so then the process is, if somebody wants to work with you or just learn more about this whole thing, do they take a course or do they work with you one-on-one in terms of breathing, meditation, yoga, or I guess all three at the same time?
Yeah, they work with us one-on-one. And some people are just interested in the yoga. Other people are more interested in meditation. And some just want to talk. They just want someone to talk to and offer a new perspective. So we might offer things like journaling, sleep support, new perspectives. We might integrate the breathing and small movements and mindfulness. We'll probably bring in lots of different aspects so that over the course of 6, 8, or 10 sessions that we have, or maybe even more, they get consistent practice in noticing how they feel and what they want and making effective choices for self-care.
And so if they're working with the company in terms of some of these kinds of things they can talk about, is it in person or can it be done virtually with still COVID around?
Yeah, both. Yeah, we do it on Zoom. So people can be living in another state or in person if they're close to Asheville.
And does it work in those can be done virtually?
It can be done virtually. Yes, it all works. We can do movement. We can do the breath work online. We can do easy breathing practices. We can do meditation instruction. And we can do just one-on-one mentoring.
Okay. And so again, I'd like to thank you for being my guest the second half hour, Margaret, on the BLAINESWORLD show. One last time, if folks want to get in touch with you, the best bet is?
discover@amindfulemergence.com. That's our email address.
And you also mentioned one thing Eddie mentioned too, which is a great service you offer. You also have stuff on YouTube?
Yes.
Some tapes?
Yes, Eddie has created many videos. Check us out, amindfulemergence.com.
Okay. Thank you for being my guest this second half hour. Eddie LeShure, my guest the first half hour. Also, I'd like to thank Amy Pierce-Nash, my producer. Look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. And Margaret, if you just stay with me, I'm going to end our session. And if you and Eddie would just stay for a second, I'll catch you on the other end. Thanks again. Hope to see you actually in person one time.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.